Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz. Jeff Bennett is on assignment. On the NewsHour tonight, Ukraine uses U.S.-made long-range missiles inside Russia for the first time, while President Biden meets with world leaders at the G20 summit for the last time and tries to cement his legacy before leaving office. Donald Trump nominates Dr. Mehmet Oz, a celebrity physician who's been accused of promoting pseudoscience, to head the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. And federal workers brace themselves for President-elect Trump's plans to overhaul the civil service, potentially firing a host of government workers and replacing them with loyalists.
Employees are fearful, scared for the jobs, for their families, and many of them are already considering leaving.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Kathy and Paul Anderson, and Camilla and George Smith.
The Charles F. Kettering Foundation, working to advance inclusive democracies. Learn more at kettering.org.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, fostering informed and engaged communities. More at kf.org.
And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. 1,000 days ago, Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. And today, Ukraine marked that grim milestone with a first, using a long-range American missile system to hit a target inside Russia. Also today, Russia released its updated nuclear doctrine that says it could use nuclear weapons if attacked by a conventionally armed country supported by a nuclear power. All this as leaders of the G20 nations concluded a summit in Rio de Janeiro. That is where Nick Schifrin is covering President Biden's final gathering and Ukraine's strike. Nick?
Amna, Ukraine fired those long-range missiles known as ATACMS, the Army Tactical Missile System, into the Russian region of Bryansk. That is right next to the Kursk region, which Ukrainian soldiers seized this summer. North Korean troops have recently joined Russian troops there in massing to try and recapture Kursk from Ukraine. The target of today's ATACMS strike is reportedly an ammunition depot. In the coming days, expect strikes on similar targets, including logistics hubs and command and control sites, in order to protect those Ukrainian troops in Kursk and also make Russia pay a price for deploying North Korean troops. Now, Ukraine is certainly a topic here at the G20 in Rio, but many of the leaders here are looking beyond President Biden, some to China, all to his successor.
In front of Rio's Sugarloaf Mountain, the world's most powerful leaders prepared for their family photo. Chinese President Xi Jinping was there. The collected staff was there, as were the Global South's three core leaders, Brazil, India, South Africa, next to the man who calls himself their partner. But that's when the leaders began to notice someone was missing.
Behind the palm tree right now.
The White House pool camera hunts for the missing president, with the Canadian and Italian prime ministers left to look on, as Brazil's President Lula da Silva decides not to wait. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, it seems like the Global South doesn't need the U.S. to fill the family. For years, Latin America has increasingly dealt with China, the largest trading partner outside the region and often the builder of much-needed infrastructure like the Pacific Ocean's second-largest port inaugurated in Peru last week. But this week's G20 reunion was shadowed by a once-and-future relative. Donald Trump was like the Harry Potter character Voldemort, he who must not be named.
As we look to deepen our relationship, we'll obviously talk about the new American president and some of the work we're going to do together around that.
There's a lot of work to be done together, from poverty to hunger to climate change. But the next Trump administration's priorities don't necessarily align with this group, including Trump's vow to impose global tariffs, as alluded to by French President Emmanuel Macron.
Fragmentation and fracture of the international order by tariff policies that are controlled by the strongest simply leads all others to not respect it.
But others show Trump more regard. Last Thursday, Argentinian President Javier Milei visited Mar-a-Lago, and at the G20 just days later, Milei reversed Argentina's previous position and blocked host Brazil's attempt to tax the super-rich. Milei has been an unabashed Trump supporter.
The global elite cries over the defeat of communist Kamala Harris. Yes, the communist Kamala Harris. Meanwhile, freedom advances and expects with hope, just like other decent people, a second presidency of Donald Trump.
In its final months, the Biden administration is doing what it can to enact enduring policy change. This weekend, President Biden toured the Amazon, the first sitting president to do so. He created an International Conservation Day and pledged new financial help for the Amazon. His administration hopes that investments in clean energy infrastructure are irreversible.
It's true. Some may seek to deny or delay the clean energy revolution that's underway in America. But nobody can reverse it. Nobody. Not when so many people, regardless of party or politics, are enjoying its benefits.
It is important that he went there to see with his own eyes, but he's leaving the administration, so I don't know what we can expect in concrete measures.
Thais Bomvarchi is with Greenpeace Brazil.
The policies are reversible, and the big problem is that their consequences are more difficult to reverse than the policies itself, you know?
And so as the G20 concluded, they retried the family photo and made sure Biden was in the middle before he says goodbye. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil.
President-elect Donald Trump has named 2 more people to his administration, investment banker Howard Lutnick as Commerce Secretary and Dr. Mehmet Oz, the noted TV personality and heart surgeon, to head the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Dr. Oz will oversee programs that provide health care coverage to about half of all Americans. His talk show, which ran for nearly 15 years, was one of the most popular during the daytime. But he's pushed questionable medical treatments not backed by experts and has sometimes promoted misinformation. In making the announcement, Mr. Trump said that Dr. Oz fit right in with the Make America Healthy campaign. Lev Fasher of Stat News has been following Oz's career, and he joins me now. Lev, thanks for being with us. So you profiled Dr. Oz back during his Senate run in 2022 in Pennsylvania. And back then, you pointed out that while he is a medical doctor and a noted heart surgeon, he also spent much of his career embracing untruths, as you put it. What did you mean by that, and what kind of reaction are you hearing to him being named to lead CMS?
That's right. This is someone who, in the course of his famous TV show, his career as a celebrity doctor, essentially was known for promoting weight loss supplements that didn't have any evidence to support their use. He at one point tweeted about astrology being a valuable tool to learn health information from. So he has a lengthy track record of that kind of dubious statement, to put it mildly. He once even got in trouble with the Food and Drug Administration for suggesting that common brands of apple juice have unsafe levels of arsenic. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of concern being expressed in the public health community upon the announcement of this nomination, because he is going to be running this sprawling, massive federal agency that is responsible for millions and millions of Americans' healthcare.
And that sprawling agency means he's in charge of Medicare, Medicaid, the Children's Health Program, would oversee the health care exchanges. So what kind of influence could he have on policy?
Yeah, it's a fascinating pick because this is, as you say, a celebrated surgeon and a celebrity, but this is a very bureaucratic agency. It's both a regulatory agency and essentially an insurance provider. So he's going to have immense influence over many of the levers of government when it comes to providing healthcare. He's going to be reporting, if both of them are confirmed, to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who would be serving as health secretary. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two work together. And in some senses, they are aligned. In others, they are not. Oz, at various points, has been supportive of vaccines against COVID, against measles, mumps, rubella. So whether there are certain issues that it turns out he's at odds with the Republican mainstream and the Trump administration, as well as with RFK, that is an unknown still.
So this is an agency that covers more than 150 million Americans. In his nomination, President-elect Trump said that Oz would, quote, cut waste and fraud within our country's most expansive government agency, in what some say is a signal that there could be cuts coming, possibly to entitlement spending. Tell us more about what that could look like and who that would impact.
Yeah, Trump has talked about wanting RFK and Oz as well to go after what he's calling the illness industrial complex. And it's interesting in the context of Mehmet Oz, who has in the past been a big supporter of Medicare Advantage, essentially Medicare plans that are run by private companies. He's actually supported a near universalization of coverage for Medicare Advantage, which amounts in one sense to a huge expansion of health coverage for Americans, and in another sense, the privatization of one of the biggest safety net health programs we have. So it's remains to be seen, what he's going to do in this agency, which has immense influence over how much doctors are getting paid, what procedures and drugs are covered. They've played a huge role in determining coverage levels for GLP-1 drugs for weight loss, like Ozempic, Wegovy. So he has a lot of power here, and the way the Trump administration asks him to wield it is going to be very fascinating to watch.
You mentioned the nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead Health and Human Services. He would be Dr. Oz's boss if Oz is also confirmed to this position at CMS. Just step back for a moment and tell us what this says to you, big picture, in terms of these two men being nominated for these positions, about this next administration's approach to the role these agencies should play.
Well, to put it very mildly, these are not people who have the approval of the medical and scientific establishment. People who've been working in public health for decades, people in academia who research health and medicine, they are not fans, generally speaking, of RFK and of Dr. Oz, because they have a long track record of putting forth misinformation about vaccines in particular, sowing doubt just about basic public health measures that haven't historically been contentious. So clearly, President-elect Trump is signaling that even more so in his next administration, he wants to shake up the establishment. He wants to upend the status quo when it comes to public health and just the more basic ways that Americans are provided with healthcare, access medicine and medical care. And these two are about as outside the mainstream as you could conceive of for picks to run the health department and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
All right, Lev Fasher of Stat News joining us tonight. Lev, thank you so much.
Thanks.
The day's other headlines start on Capitol Hill, where FEMA's administrator said she's pushing for an investigation into political bias in her agency's relief efforts.
Seems to me it's part of a mindset that's in government. This is the scary part.
In two separate hearings today, House members grilled Deanne Criswell about a FEMA employee who was fired earlier this month. A text message shows the person directed workers to, quote, avoid homes advertising Trump while providing hurricane relief in Florida. The employee has said she was following FEMA's security guidelines after workers reported hostility from certain residents. Republican lawmakers expressed concern that the employee's actions indicate widespread bias within the agency.
She had given multiple interviews where she claimed that avoiding politically hostile homes is commonplace throughout FEMA. Is this a practice at FEMA?
Congressman, there is nothing in any of our policies, our training, or our information sent out to our field workers to avoid any home for whatever reason, especially not because of a political affiliation. The actions of this one individual are not representative of the work that we do at FEMA.
Criswell has also said she ordered the Inspector General to do a full review of the incident in question. The hearings come a day after President Biden requested $40 billion in additional funding from Congress for FEMA's ongoing response to Hurricanes Helene and Milton. The transgender bathroom debate has now reached the U.S. Capitol building as a Republican effort unfolds that would ban Democrat Sarah McBride from using women's restrooms. 2 weeks ago, she became the first trans lawmaker elected to Congress. GOP Representative Nancy Mace wrote the resolution. Today, she told reporters the bill is specifically aimed at McBride.
I have PTSD from the abuse I've suffered at the hands of a man, and I know how vulnerable women and girls are in private spaces. So I'm absolutely 100% going to stand in the way of any man who wants to be in a women's restroom, in our locker rooms, in our changing rooms. I will be there fighting you every step of the way.
House Speaker Mike Johnson signaled support for the bill. Democrats, including McBride herself, denounced it as bullying and as a distraction from other issues. A top U.S. diplomat says that a truce between Israel and Hezbollah is, quote, within our grasp. Special Envoy Amos Hochstein met with Lebanese officials today in the capital city of Beirut to discuss the latest U.S. ceasefire plan. Just a day earlier, both Hezbollah and the Lebanese government signaled an openness to that proposal. Hochstein urged all parties, including Israel, to act swiftly.
We have a real opportunity to bring this conflict to an end. This is a moment of decision-making. I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
Just hours before today's talks, an Israeli airstrike killed 5 people in central Beirut. It was the 3rd strike on the heart of Lebanon's capital in just the last 2 days. Separately, Iran has reportedly increased its weapons-grade uranium stockpile despite international demands to scale back its nuclear program. That's according to a confidential report from the UN's nuclear watchdog, which was seen by the Associated Press. The State Department today would not deny that report. Foreign governments and human rights groups have denounced the sentencing of 45 pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong. The former lawmakers and protesters received prison terms ranging from 4 to 10 years for their roles in an unofficial primary vote back in 2020. They were accused of trying to paralyze Hong Kong's government under a Beijing-imposed national security law. The U.S. consulate in Hong Kong condemned the sentences, calling for authorities to, quote, cease politically motivated prosecutions of Hong Kong citizens and to immediately release all political prisoners. But in Beijing, China's foreign ministry defended the outcome.
任何人都不能打着民主的旗号
No one should be allowed to use democracy as a pretext to engage in unlawful activities and escape justice. Certain Western countries ignore the fact that they maintain their own national security through judicial procedures, but unreasonably criticized Hong Kong courts for fairly implementing the Hong Kong national security law.
The law took effect 4 years ago, and critics say it's led to a crackdown on free speech in the former British colony. Back in this country, prosecutors are urging the judge in Donald Trump's hush money case not to dismiss his criminal conviction following his election victory. Instead, they're open to delaying his sentencing until after Trump leaves office. It had been scheduled for next week. In a letter, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office said that while it realizes Trump's return to the White House, quote, will raise unprecedented legal questions, we also deeply respect the fundamental role of the jury in our constitutional system. Trump was convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records back in May. Judge Juan Merchan has not signaled when he'll make a final decision. In the meantime, Trump spent today near Brownsville, Texas, with Elon Musk. The pair attended a Starship rocket launch by Musk's company, SpaceX. It's the latest sign of the significant role the billionaire has taken within Trump's orbit. Musk has been an ever-present companion to Trump, staying at his Mar-a-Lago estate, attending events, and even weighing in on staffing for the new administration. On Wall Street today, stocks ended mixed. The Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped more than 100 points. The Nasdaq, however, jumped nearly 200 points, or about 1%. The S&P 500 also ended higher on the day. Still to come on the NewsHour, we travel to a Texas border county that voted for a Republican president for the first time in over 120 years. A small Caribbean island devastated by a recent hurricane seeks global support to withstand climate change. And columnist Peggy Noonan's new book about what the United States is and what it could be.
This is the PBS NewsHour from the David M. Rubenstein Studio at WETA in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
President-elect Donald Trump has vowed to make wide-scale changes to the federal workforce, cutting jobs, replacing career civil servants with political appointees, and relocating government offices. Laura Barone-Lopez has more in just a moment, but first, let's hear from federal government employees across the U.S.
My name is Colin Kramer. I'm a chemist with the EPA. I'm involved with AFGE Local 704 as a union member.
My name is Jesus Ariano. I'm a scientist and a program director at the National Science Foundation. I am also president of AFGE Local 3403.
My name is Michael Knowles. I'm an asylum officer with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and I'm the Executive Vice President of the AFGE National Citizenship and Immigration Services Council 119.
I'm Sharia Smith, a Dallas-based civil rights attorney at the U.S. Department of Education, where I also serve as the union president for my almost 3,000 colleagues in this agency nationwide. I did read after his election some statements about eliminating the agency, and I think it's short-sighted. Certainly for perhaps he has not had to interact with our agency because his own children, he's been able to afford to educate them privately. But that is not the situation for most Americans.
When our future boss, the president, is passing the message that we do not belong here, that many of us will lose our jobs, that our families will suffer, that we'll be maybe forcibly relocated to other areas. We care, we suffer. Employees are fearful, scared for their jobs, for their families, and many of them are already considering leaving.
It would hold people more accountable to carry out the policies of a new administration, whether or not those policies were lawful. It's really more of what we would say would be more of a loyalty indicator rather than an efficiency indicator.
I worry about taking projects, data, and conclusions made in good faith, made through the scientific process, rigorously checked, peer-reviewed, and gone through all of these different avenues. I worry about those taken and being used for illegitimate purposes, illegitimate decisions, in ways that they, frankly, have no business being used to justify.
The federal government is going to lose hundreds of years of institutional memory and expertise. That is actually a national security issue, although we are not a national security agency. We're talking about if there's no science, there's no progress. If there's no progress, we won't be able to stand up to strategic adversaries.
They would be evaluating our work not based on how well we regulate servicers or how well we protect American citizens from predatory schools or how well we enforce laws that protect our nation's children, but how observant we are to whatever political whims might be at play in the White House.
We're very concerned about attitudes by various politicians that somehow civil servants are an obstacle or a deep state of resistors or, woke employees, or we've even seen language of, far left open border advocates. And I would say there's nothing farther from the truth.
And our White House correspondent, Laura Barone Lopez, joins me now. Laura, good to see you.
Good to be here.
So we heard some fear, some confusion in the voices of those federal employees about the extent of President-elect Trump's plans to overhaul government agencies. What do we know about what he's planning to do?
President-elect Donald Trump made clear in his campaign, but also he's made clear in his cabinet picks that he wants loyalty across the board with little to no resistance. That is his top goal. And so to achieve that, sources close to the transition say that he is expected to issue an executive order known as Schedule F as soon as he takes office. Now, this is an executive order that he issued during his first term. It didn't take effect. But what is Schedule F, Amna? Schedule F would allow the president to change the job classification of nonpartisan career federal workers to political appointees. So in essence, it makes it much easier for Donald Trump to fire anyone he deems disloyal and to replace them with loyalists. Now, initially, those who wrote Schedule F believed that it could affect some 50,000 federal workers across agencies, but that number is likely a minimum, and experts that we spoke to say that it could affect many more people.
So what else do we know about how far-reaching this could be, and are there any guardrails in place to protect against that?
President Joe Biden attempted to put in some guardrails. He tried to protect federal workers with a regulation, but Donald Trump, once he becomes president, could very well reverse that regulation. And experts that we spoke to said that he could implement Schedule F, this executive order, within 4 to 6 months after taking office. Now, I spoke to Don Moynihan. He's a public policy professor at the University of Michigan. And he said that Donald Trump and his allies are already specifically identifying certain targets.
They're engaging in a strategy of naming and shaming of federal employees, of intimidation of career civil servants who are not really in the public eye. For some of them, they're creating websites funded by the Heritage Foundation that lists these individuals, puts them online, and is telling the Trump administration, these are the people that you should fire. It is a fairly disturbing pattern, which I think will only make it harder to recruit and retain talented people who want to work for the federal government.
Now, my producer, Shrey Poppin, and I spoke to Mike Howell. He is the head of what's called the Oversight Project at the Heritage Foundation, which Don just spoke about. And Mike Howell said that they have filed some 65,000 federal Freedom of Information requests across government agencies to obtain emails between federal workers and documents about federal workers. Now, Mike Howell with Heritage says that they're not working directly with Donald Trump's team, but their goal is to help identify bureaucrats that they deem partisan. And their top priority is to target people across Homeland Security and Justice Departments, as well as the FBI, who they think are sympathetic to things like Black Lives Matter protesters, who have worked on diversity or inclusion projects, and who worked on cases against the January 6 rioters. They're also focused on civil servants who just simply are carrying out President Biden's policy priorities. And so they're hoping to flag for the incoming Trump administration anyone they call untrustworthy, despite this being the very nature of civil servants' jobs, Amna, which is to carry out any president's agenda, regardless of their political affiliation.
You know, in some of the voices there, we also heard some fear about wholesale gutting of federal agencies and departments there. Mr. Trump himself has said he'd like to abolish the Education Department. How feasible is any of that?
Well, let's just lay out the numbers real quick. Currently, there are more than 2 million civil servants, not political appointees. That number has been pretty consistent throughout the 1960s. Despite that, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's going to co-lead this government efficiency agency, has says that they want to, quote, delete outright some government agencies. Now, the experts that we talked to said that that's not exactly feasible, that would be a lot harder, and that historically agencies are created, reorganized, and eliminated by Congress. So Donald Trump and his staff may very well run into headwinds from Congress.
What's the larger impact all of this could have, and are there any historic parallels we can look to here?
Don Moynihan of the University of Michigan compared this to the 1950s McCarthy era, where civil servants had to be vetted for loyalty under this guise of rooting out communists, essentially. And Moynihan said that sometimes that meant that they would target who they, quote, deemed as deviants, like LGBTQ people. But Don Moynihan added that filling the civil service with with cronies as well as loyalists, with friends, defeats the very purpose that the civil service was founded on.
If you look at the history of America, the introduction of the civil service system was a response to the corruption that took place with the spoils system that preceded it. And it was called the spoils system because once a president or a governor or a mayor took over the government, they used public resources, not always in the public good, but to reward their supporters.
As Moynihan said there, Amna, this could potentially lead to more corruption across the federal government.
Our White House correspondent Laura Barón-López. Laura, thank you.
Thank you.
Two weeks ago, many parts of the country saw dramatic political shifts to the right. Even places that were once considered Democratic strongholds flipped red. Special correspondent Christopher Booker traveled to one such area near the southern border of Texas and has this report.
Good neighbors, people tend to look for each other.
56-year-old Jorge Bazan has lived in the Rio Grande Valley, just minutes from the southern border, his entire life. And for as long as he can remember, Bazan and his family voted for Democrats.
They used to tell us the Democratic Party would help out the poor. Clinton was an awesome president. I voted for him twice. Obama, I voted for him twice. I think they did a good job.
Seems like everybody was satisfied.
But Bazan, who works for a local water utility, says Democrats have abandoned the working class.
They say they haven't, but I think they have.
So in 2016, Bazan voted for Donald Trump. He went for him again in 2020 and this year.
This time it was easier than the prior elections. People in this area are hurting due to the economy. We used to buy 3 camels at Walmart for $20. We'll feed a family, my family. Now I pay $24 for 2.
Bazan's shift is part of a much larger trend now coming into focus. Look at this map from 1996, when President Bill Clinton won all but 2 counties along the Texas border. Fast forward to this year, the map has nearly flipped. Perhaps no county has gotten more attention than Starr. In 2016, it voted almost 80% for Hillary Clinton. In 2020, President Biden still won, but only by 5 points. This year, former President Trump won Starr County by 16 points, turning it red for the first time in over 120 years.
Depending who you ask, the flip was either stunning or predictable. Starr County is 97% Hispanic, the highest in the country. It's also largely Catholic and among the poorest counties in the U.S., with a household median income of just under $36,000.
At the Texas Cafe, a Starr County staple for almost a century, diners don't shy away from politics. There are pictures of John F. Kennedy on the wall. But these days, there's a different tone.
I was a Democrat all my life, but then when things started getting like the economy and things, I said I'm voting Republican, see if we can see a change in our system.
I like Trump because when he was president the first time, everything was a lot more economic. The gas, the food, everything.
Many also support Trump's promises on immigration, including mass deportations. But others now wonder about the consequences.
Even though we voted for him, how far is he gonna go? And he came yesterday. I'm not gonna fight for you, but I'll fight for you if you're here. Like if your roots are here, you have a house, you get your family, you got your kids in school.
Hey, how do I join? I want to, I'm a Republican.
Ross Barrera is the former head of the Starr County GOP. He too has some concerns about how the deportation process might unfold. But he says we have a law.
There are a lot of people wondering, how does a Latino population vote for someone who is advocating for mass deportation like this?
Well, because we don't see ourselves as Latinos, we see ourselves as Americans. And as long as the national media or anybody keeps saying, you're Mexican American, no, I'm an American of Mexican descent. Come here the legal way like our ancestors did. As an officer, you command, you lead.
Barrera is a retired Army colonel, born and raised here. His parents supported Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, so he did too. But in Starr County, they were outliers.
I think the Democrat Party at one time was the party of the working class, and they focused on that. They focused on the family. We want you to have some type of assistance to go to college or or we're going to help you getting your first house. People, here we call those blue dog Democrats. They don't exist anymore. The message that the Democrats had were social issues. I got it. Yeah, I got that. But that's not what's hurting people here.
Despite many down ballot wins, Democrats here are trying to figure out what went wrong in the presidential race.
No one really has come from the Democratic Party to visit. They just felt that this area was blue, maybe.
That it was a lock.
And it was turnkey, but it didn't.
Jessica Vera Rios leads the Democratic Party of Starr County. She says one thing seems obvious.
Trump did an excellent job of running a campaign, of selling a propaganda.
Is the Democratic Party losing the information battle then?
Yes, I do believe that. There was a Republican commercial coming on talking about transgender issues, sexuality, and they were selling it. And that's when I thought, we may have problems.
Even though Vice President Harris didn't explicitly campaign on transgender rights, people we spoke with felt those Republican attacks resonated.
The Democratic Party was on the defense.
Cecilia Hernandez's family owns a garbage collection company. They're Democrats and put Harris signs outside their business. But as the election neared, the signs were vandalized, and a note left on their door said, "This is a Republican state. Go back to Mexico."
I think that they wanted to intimidate us and they wanted to scare us.
Hernandez was surprised Starr County flipped as dramatically as it did. She thinks Democratic economic policies are more helpful to Valley residents, but she says,
we don't do an effective job of communicating that. I think the fear-mongering on the other side, all the misinformation did not help us at all. Half the things that people were saying, I was just like, I'm not on the same planet as these people.
Still, despite the loss, Hernandez thinks legitimate civil competition between two political parties is ultimately better for this area.
South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley is moving probably at the very least in the purple direction.
Alvaro Corral is a political scientist at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. He says this year's results should be a warning sign for Democrats.
The growing racial and ethnic diversification of America, led by Latino Hispanic voters in the electorate, was thought to be a boon for Democrats moving forward and a way for them to sort of lock their hold in national politics. But as we've seen with the Rio Grande Valley and its shifts, potentially that story is too simplistic and that demographics aren't necessarily destiny. It turns out that you need to ask for people's votes, you need to deliver policy, you need to deliver policy in big ways that resonate with people's pocketbooks. And if you don't do that, you may be surprised by what you get.
In Starr County, Trump's win has raised more questions than answers. Will his tariff and tax proposals actually improve the economy? How will an immigration crackdown impact the community? And, even longer term, has this once deep blue area finally turned red? For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Christopher Booker in South Texas.
Delegates at the United Nations Climate Summit in Azerbaijan are frantically trying to strike a deal that would provide as much as $1 trillion per year for developing countries to help them withstand the impact of climate change. No country is watching the talks more closely than Grenada in the Eastern Caribbean. In July, Hurricane Beryl, energized by warmer waters, caused catastrophic damage to Grenada's islands of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. Special correspondent Laura Trevelyan reports now from Carriacou on the recovery effort and the preparations for whatever the future holds.
This is the trail of destruction Hurricane Beryl left across Carriacou. The Category 4 storm made landfall on July the 1st with winds of more than 150 miles per hour, damaging 98% of the island's homes. The storm caught many in Carriacou unawares as it strengthened so rapidly. This is what's left of the historic Roman Catholic Church. The parish priest is Father Andrew Barnard.
It's heartbreaking, really, to see the destruction, total destruction.
Father Andrew took refuge in the sacristy of the church as the storm raged.
After the storm calmed down, I came out and went into the community to encourage persons who were on the streets, devastated, shocked, bewildered.
It's interesting to see that Christ and Mary and Joseph survived the storm.
Yes, all these had remained intact, and I immediately signed myself.
Do you think it's a symbol? Oh, I'm so sorry, Father. Is it symbolic?
It's very symbolic. It is symbolic because it tells us that He's watching over us.
The hurricane killed 3 people here on the day it struck. That death toll rose in the storm's aftermath. Carrickou's minister, Tevin Andrews, told me why.
Roads were blocked because of the telephone posts in the road and the trees and debris and other things like that. They couldn't get to the hospital. Yeah, I lost close friends. I lost close friends as a result of this.
People on this close-knit island with a population of less than 10,000 are mourning those they lost while trying to recover. It's the rainy season, making life arduous for Patricia McNeil, who lives upstairs and owns a pharmacy on the ground floor.
Because whenever the rain falls, this area where we're standing the water is like this high. So it seeps through the ceiling. So I have to put down buckets and move the shelves around so that the goods don't get wet. So it's been like that ever since. Sweep, mop, put down buckets, as long as the rain comes.
Would you consider leaving Carrickou?
No. To go where? That's my home. I don't have anywhere to go.
Samantha feels just the same way. Even though this mother of 8 now struggles to find diapers and wipes for her baby Zaydel, Carrickou is home.
What happened to your house?
Everything gone.
Everything?
Everything done, gone.
The roof?
Everything. This wasn't my house. This is something I built back.
What is life like now?
Well, life is not really tough for me.
Water's in short supply for Samantha and so many others. People used to catch rainwater on their roofs and store it. You can't do that if your roof has blown off. And for the fishermen who make their living from the water, the hurricane was catastrophic. Fishing isn't just part of the historical tradition of Carrickou. Fishermen are a key part of this community. So when Hurricane Beryl blew through and destroyed the fishermen's boats, it struck at the very heart of this island. In the village of Windward, I meet Alwyn Bethel, who's been fishing these waters for more than 50 years.
Can you just tell me about the damage that Hurricane Beryl did to the fishermen's boats?
Plenty damage, plenty, a lot of damage.
Like what kind of thing? Boats smashed up?
Yeah, boats smashed up, they lost the boat, they lost the line, they lost everything. They lost their livelihoods. So they'll go back and start all over again.
That's got to be so hard.
Yeah, real hard.
Hurricane Beryl destroyed industries old and new. Just look at Carrickou's solar panels, which were a source of great pride for Grenada's government.
We saw your solar panels here, and we saw that they have been destroyed.
Yes. Millions of dollars were spent in getting this solar panel going because we wanted to be the first island, small island, in the Caribbean to be 100% reliant on renewable energy. That was our aim, our goal, and still is our aim, our goal, and our mission. We are playing our part. We are doing what we're supposed to do. We want the bigger countries to also play their part and do what they're supposed to do.
A sentiment echoed by students at the newly reopened Hillsborough Secondary School. These high schoolers want the industrialised countries to reduce their polluting emissions.
It is not fair that they are doing the polluting and we are facing the consequences. So there need to be a stop to this immediately.
As a small developing nation, we are suffering, we are not equipped with the resources to combat these forces of pollution.
I would say I myself am still suffering from trauma because anytime the rain falls against the tarpaulin, it's like bullets and you always have to wonder okay, is this burial coming back again? So you live with some sense of trauma, I would say.
So much needs to be repaired. Grenada's government had hurricane insurance. That's paying for some of the massive rebuilding effort. And the country's debt repayments are on hold, thanks to a special hurricane clause. But this tiny economy can't withstand many more storms.
This little piece of heaven, this united community spirit people, our existence are threatened because of the actions and inactions of our world leaders.
What's the single most important thing that would help you, that the developed world could do?
Put their money where their mouth is. Less talk, more action. Stop talking, more action. Put the money where it's supposed to go. And keep to your commitments, stick to your commitments.
Carriacou isn't counting on outside help, though. The islanders are trying to build back better, so future generations can survive whatever lies ahead. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Laura Trevelyan in Carriacou.
In her new collection of columns from the Wall Street Journal, Pulitzer Prize winner Peggy Noonan takes readers on a journey through the essence of our nation's character. With her trademark blend of storytelling, historical insight, and journalistic rigor, Noonan explores what unites us as a people, even in divisive times. She sat down with Jeff Bennett yesterday to discuss A Certain Idea of America.
Peggy Noonan, welcome to the NewsHour.
Thank you.
You say this book is about loving America and enjoying thinking aloud about it. Tell me more about the intention behind the book.
Oh, gosh. An editor and I went through the past few years of columns that I've written for the Wall Street Journal. And what we found was that we liked the most, enjoyed the most, had the most fun with, and also felt a feeling of satisfaction about those columns that deal with history, mostly American history, and mostly with America and its essence and what it is now and what we're trying to make it. To me, America has been simply a great subject of my life. Maybe it's been the great subject of everybody's life, but I was very conscious in going through my stuff that it's about America.
Yeah. Reading these columns, it made me wonder, how do you view your role and your responsibility as a public thinker, a public writer, a columnist?
Oh, that's a great question. I think maybe both David Brooks and I think, and many columnists simply think, try to be honest about the world that you think you're seeing around you, then try to say it clearly. And maybe honesty and clarity together will equal some kind of small helpfulness, you know?
There's a chapter that stood out to me because it has 2 columns in it. You know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, I do.
And the title is, "It Appears He Didn't Take My Advice." One column is about Donald Trump, the other column is about Joe Biden. And it strikes me that presidents are in many ways, they're avatars for our collective ambitions, our hopes, our dreams, our frustrations, our grievances.
Yeah.
When you think about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who are very different, what do they reveal about us as a nation?
Oh, ooh, that's an important question. With Joe Biden, I'm not sure. It seems to me he had a historical purpose, and that was end one time, and he hoped begin another. Instead, he sort of ended, and then the thing he ended came back. Donald Trump came out of an American governmental reality that wasn't working anymore. I mean, people were looking at Washington as that thing that gave us 2 long unwon wars, that thing that didn't notice the 2008 economic crisis was coming, that thing that can't handle a pandemic. I think he came out of grave frustration. I think he was a dramatic character who people picked dramatically. They had a consciousness they were throwing the long ball when they picked him.
As a former speechwriter for President Reagan and a special assistant to him, you had a front row seat to this significant foundational moment in American conservatism. Do you see any through lines between that moment and the moment in which we're living, or are they completely disconnected in your view, the Reagan era and the Trump version of conservatism?
They're not completely disconnected. I'll tell you one thing that I think is a through line. During the Reagan era, 1980-88, I think the media understood the Republican Party to be the party of the rich and of mink stoles and of let's get dressed up, get in the limo, go to the convention, then go to the fundraiser. Understandably, that was kind of the portrait. But I was there and I could feel the populist impulses beginning to gather. I was there when working class folk started to feel more comfortable with the Republicans for the first time in a few generations. Reagan Democrats are now great-grandpa, but their 30-year-old great-grandsons are populist nationalists. But I do kind of see a through line from one to the other. I was there for a party beginning to change. This is the change.
Given the challenges facing both parties right now, what do you think are the key qualities that will define political leadership in the decade to come?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think Donald Trump sort of set a template for probably going back to the old-fashioned person in the suit and the tie and speaking the things we used to really like you're very collected, you speak in rounded sentences and paragraphs, and you're well-modulated and sophisticated and earnest and unshook and not dramatic and emotional. Those things just don't have as much value, let's face it, for the future, for the Democrats or the Republicans. So I think it'll be a more emotional and acting out kind of time.
What do we lose, though, when we lose that standard of decorum and decency in our culture, setting aside the politics?
Yes, yeah, I understand. You know what we lose? We lose modeling for the young. It is the job of adults, in part, to show the kids how it's done, how you act, what dignity looks like, what being a real grown-up looks like. When we play those things down and think we don't need them anymore, you don't make much of an impression that way, you are telling the kids you have nobody to model yourself on. You're not giving them any social cues or emotional cues. And that means they're deprived of a certain seriousness which they could observe and later incorporate into their own presentation. And that's a loss.
Yeah. I will tell you, I have read your writing for years. I've gone back and read your speeches, the speeches that you've written for President Reagan. You're one of my favorite writers. What piece of writing are you proudest of?
Oh, gosh. When I was just starting at the Wall Street Journal as a weekly columnist, 9/11 happened. And I did for the next year 50 columns on 9/11. And in those columns, I was working out everything, every intellectual obsession, every emotion, every fear. And it was the early days of me working online, and a community sprung up around my columns, where people who were going through exactly what I was were writing in after they read my column and sharing their experiences. And it was something I'd never seen before because the internet was new and what I was doing was new. And Jeff, it was wonderful. It was a community. You know, we all say these phony words about healing and stuff like that, but it really was a community that sprang up and was healing together. And in a way, I'll never get over that, of being part of that. It was beautiful.
The book is A Certain Idea of America by Peggy Noonan. A real honor to speak with you. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. You are so kind to do this. I really appreciate it.
And that is the NewsHour for tonight. I'm Amna Nawaz. On behalf of the entire NewsHour team, thank you for joining us.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by
Consumer Cellular. This is Sam. How may I help you? This is a pocket dial. Well, somebody's pocket. Thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you get nationwide coverage with no contract. That's kind of our thing. Have a nice day.
Moving our economy for 160 years. BNSF, the engine that connects us.
Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. And with the ongoing support of these institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
You're watching PBS.